For most people on earth, owning a home is the greatest ever achievement that they'll ever have. Nothing brings more satisfaction to them than that. But is it really true? Have we been lied to? Is it true that owning a home is having an asset? Is buying or building a home a great financial decision? Or are there better options? Well, in today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you why renting a home and owning a home later on in your life is actually a better financial decision for your life. And I'm going to be using myself as an example. So stick around. The other thing that you need to understand is that a lot of what I'm going to be sharing is multifactorial. There's nothing like viewing it from one direction. You need to put together a lot of different perspectives for it to make sense, because all these decisions are made using emotions, using logic, using a lot of different factors. So you need to consider them together for you to understand the whole idea of why it's actually a better financial decision for you to actually rent a house and buy or build a house later on in your life. Because honestly speaking, right from the very beginning, you'll understand that in most cases, a home is not an asset, it's a liability. Now, the first thing that we're going to talk about is how are homes usually acquired. If someone wants to own a home, how do they usually own a home? It's usually one of two ways. One is either building a home, or two, buying a home. Now, the option of building a home is actually a capital intensive one. It requires a lot of money, and so we'll talk about it later. When it comes to buying a home, you usually have two options. One of them is buying the home outright, and the second one is taking a mortgage. Now, buying a home outright is also really expensive. You know, if you're going to just get maybe $200,000 to buy a home right at the beginning, it's going to cost you quite an amount of money. So that's also expensive. We're going to talk about it later. Now, what we're going to talk about now is getting a mortgage, because that's what is a bit compared to renting, for example. Because when you talk to people about renting and they're like, oh, why are you renting? You're wasting money. You could just use that same exact money to be paying it towards your mortgage. And yes, it might make a little bit of sense, but let's get into the details of it. So first, let's imagine you're going to be buying a house that costs $200,000. Now, in all honesty, $200,000, that kind of house will vary differently depending on which part of the world you're in. If you're where I am, for example, that would be a really good house. If you're in the US, for example, that would be, well, just a house, one that someone can sleep in. Nothing like a really good house, but well, in the end, it's all a house. So if you're going to be doing that, then you're going to probably need a down payment, let's say 20%. 20% of $200,000 is about $40,000. And then you're going to have closing fees, let's say $20,000. So that's $60,000 that you're going to have to pay right at the beginning before you do anything. Now, someone who is renting doesn't have $60,000 that they're going to be paying. Now, in the end, all of you are going to be paying maybe monthly fees of, let's say, $2,000, yeah? Someone who is renting is going to be paying $2,000. Honestly, for $200,000 house, depending on which part of the world you're in, it's unlikely that you're going to be renting it at $2,000. Whether it's in my country where I am or in the US, if the house costs $200,000, you're probably going to be paying only about $1,000 in rent if you're to rent the same exact house. But someone who is renting is not going to have to pay $60,000 down payment. And so what that means is that that's money that's available to them that they can utilize for other things. Now, if you're going to be buying the same house outright or building the house yourself, if it's $200,000, buying outright right at the beginning or building it should cost a bit cheaper. So let's say maybe $170,000 or maybe $160,000. Yeah, that's what it's going to cost. So if you're going to be building a house immediately, you're going to have to part with $160,000. Guys, that's not little money. Yeah, that's quite a huge sum of money. Now, that's an opportunity cost of $160,000, i.e., what could you have done with $160,000 right now? Now, I understand that you might be at a level of wealth where you've accumulated wealth, you've done investments, you've done businesses and all those kinds of things, and for you, $160,000 is nothing. If you're at that point, that's perfect. That's the goal for each and every one of us. That's what I'm trying to explain. But if you're not at that point, then spending and saving $160,000 or $200,000 to build a house, or even just $60,000 at the beginning for you to put down for a mortgage and then spend, $2,000 every month for maybe 5, 6, 10 years in order to be paying towards that house doesn't make sense. It doesn't make a lot of financial sense. Now let me give myself as an example. I joined the workforce a few years ago, maybe about 6 years, between 6 and 7 years ago. Now at that time, of course, I had a dream house. The dream house I had at that time would have cost maybe about $78,000. Yeah, $78,000. Now, according to the amount that I was earning at that point, my salary, it would have taken me about 8 years for me to be able to save and have enough money to buy or build that house. Now, that means 8 years of me saving at least 70% of my salary. So that means I can't do anything else apart from survive. The only thing I would have been able to pay is my rent and my food, and then the rest of the money I would keep it towards building this house. And then 8 years later, which is probably next year, I would have been able to afford my dream house of $78,000. I would have lost everything else. What did I choose to do though? I only saved $6,000. It probably took me just a few months of me saving $6,000, and then I used that $6,000 to start a business. You understand? So I was renting, at that point I was renting a house that costs about $50. For me, that was okay for me because I didn't have a family, I didn't have a wife, I didn't have children, I didn't have people to take care of. I was willing to sacrifice. Also at that time, I did mind, saving 80% of my salary, sometimes 100% of my salary, because it's a really short time. Yeah, it's not 8 years of me sacrificing 70% of my salary. In all honesty, it's unlikely that anyone will sacrifice 70% of their salary for 8 years. In all practicality, I would have had to maybe 50%. If I managed to get down to 50%, maybe that would take me 10, 12 years for it to be more realistic, because you'll have emergencies, you need to go to hospital, you have some loved ones that you need to take care of, maybe siblings and things like that. It's really not practical to save 70% of your salary. So at that point, it would have taken me maybe 12 years, but for me, I could sacrifice it for just a few months, and in those few months I just had enough. That was about $6,000 for me to start a business. At that time, the business that I started was a farm. For me, that's what made the most practical sense. And because I started a farm, I was able to earn and expand my farm. And with just that small farm that I started, without considering all the other businesses that I've been able to get into right now, that farm has been able to grow to a point right now that if I decided to buy myself or build my dream house, it would take me less than 10 months of saving. If I just decided to save, it would take me less than 10 months of saving for me to build my dream house. Now, in comparison, if I was still trying to save up without a business, I would still have to build that house well. Next year, that's when I would just have enough money to start. Right now, if I decided that I wanted to build that same exact house, I could. Why? Because of the opportunity cost. Cash is king. I was able to utilize this cash to create a business, which business is now able to do for me what I want. It's able to build me a house. Now, of course, the counter argument that a lot of people will have at this point is that a house is an asset. Yeah, a house is something which will always increase in value. Many years later on, if you decide that you're broke and you really need money, you can sell it and get money. But let's be honest, guys, let's go direct to the point. You see, an asset is something that brings money into your pocket. A liability is something that takes money out of your pocket. In all reality, for everyone owning a house, is it really an asset? Unless someone buys a house and they decide to use the house as a rental. They are using it as rental. So you buy a house and then during that time, you rent it out so that you keep earning money from that house. And then, you can utilize the money maybe to pay back the mortgage or whatever you're doing. You're simply doing the house as a business to bring money into your pocket. Then there it's an asset. But if you're not, you're living in that house, you have costs. You have maintenance costs on that house. Remember, the house is also getting older. So you need to make sure the house keeps looking good to keep the standard of the house. What that means is that the house ends up being a liability. In all honesty, how many people actually buy a house to live in, considering in their heads that I'm buying this house to live in so that it appreciates in value and I sell it later on? Very few, if any. Most people buy a house for them to live in. And then when it comes to the point of selling, many people are even very emotionally attached to their houses, that the likelihood of selling the house is very, very low. So for most people on earth, the biggest percentage, a house is actually a liability. It's not an asset. It's unlike renting. If you decide to rent a house, the only costs that you have running on that house are going to be rent. That's all. But if you own a house, you have maintenance costs. Yeah, those costs are higher. They are way above your estimated costs right at the beginning. Now, of course, you're going to say that for me, I could take the risk at that point because I didn't have a family, I didn't have people I'm looking after, so I didn't really have the need or the feeling of having a home or house for those people. First of all, just to let you know, up to now, I still do rent. Yeah, right now I do have a family, I do have people that I look after, and I still do rent. But people do things for different purposes. The thing is that people make decisions emotionally and then they justify them using logic. Yeah, it's always, almost always emotional. And after they have made the decision, for example, you'll tell yourself, whoa, I like that car. And then the honest reason you like that car is because it's a red car. But then you'll justify it with reasons of it's really fast, it's not as expensive as people say, and it's very fuel efficient. So you'll go buy the car, and when people tell you, why did you buy that car? You already had the car. You'll be like, whoa, it's more fuel efficient than the car that I do have. And I think it's really fast. It will get me to work quicker. But in all honesty, if it wasn't a red car and you like the color red, you'd never have bought it. So you made the decision emotionally, but you justified it using logic. And a lot of times it's not even a conscious decision. Yeah, it just comes, unconsciously. It's just what human nature is. So same thing when it comes to, for example, building a home. A lot of people will buy a home because it's about the emotional thing of I own a home, I have a place to stay at, and then they'll justify it with, it provides security. What if I die? Where will my family be living? And it's understandable to make decisions that way. You'll maybe tell me that, well, Dr. Daniel, does that mean that you don't have a house? Guys, I actually do have a house. I've owned quite some amounts of property in different parts of my country, but I only have one house. And of course, with time, I'm going to build houses in the other places. But that house, I was able to build with just 1 month of my earnings. It's not a huge house, it's a utilitarian house. I don't like the idea of having huge houses which you're never ever going to use, with so many bedrooms, so many that you're never ever going to use. Totally not necessary. So I built a house. First of all, it's on the farm because I didn't have any alternative. It's a farm, it's a bit isolated around the area. You don't have rental properties. It just didn't make sense. I needed to be there. But secondly, it was only 1 month of my earnings. With just 1 month of my earnings from the farm, I could build myself a house. So why not? I had gotten to the point where it made logical sense for me to build a house. Now I could have decided to build that house earlier on before starting out the farm, but then it wouldn't have made sense. It would probably have taken me maybe 2 years of me saving to build that house at that point, and then I would have lost out on an opportunity. But right now, I do have the house and I still do have the business. You understand? Many years later, right now, I can decide to save up and build the house and I'll still have the business to run and do the other things. Now let's handle the what ifs. Yeah, what is the first what if? What if you die before the point where you do own a house? What happens to your family? What happens to your loved ones? Well, I personally, the best way that I decided to do that is to ensure that the people I love, the people who I care for, actually understand the businesses. First of all, I make sure that I have an emergency fund. There is an account somewhere where there's money set aside just in case something happens. Yeah, a sensible amount of money just in case something happens. These people can resort to this money and they can utilize it maybe to build a house if they feel that's the best decision for them, maybe to do whatever. But honestly, I wouldn't love that. So what do? Train them to do business. Yeah? Teach them how to do business to ensure that just in case something happened to me, the businesses would actually continue. They would be able to continue running the businesses to get the best out of the businesses and ensure that there is no change in status quo. The second thing that you're thinking to yourself is, what if the businesses do not work out? Well, it's your own responsibility to ensure that the businesses work out. The honest truth is that 80% of all small businesses that start fail within 5 years. Damning statistic, terrible. And of course, you can use that to justify the fact that you want to build a house, because if you build a house, the fact that, for example, it will be crushed by a tsunami or something is very low. Most likely it will be present 5 years from now and will have increased in value. But that only happens, businesses will only fail if you don't take due diligence to ensure that you build the business. So really, it's up to your control. It's all up to you to ensure that the business succeeds. And number 3, what if something happens to the business, you lose the business, what happens in the future? Well, the honest honest truth is that people who succeed at businesses, if someone succeeds at a business once, this person is very likely to succeed at a business twice, 3 times, 4 times. People don't usually just start businesses and succeed at them randomly. It's usually not a mistake. If someone succeeds at a business, it's because they have understood the principles and the foundations of building a business. And this person, even if you took their business away from them, they have a very high chance of going to start another business somewhere else. So people who master businesses are people who usually will be able to start a business anywhere, anytime, no matter the resources, because it's the same exact principles. So what I know you're going to say to me is that, what if I'm not cut out for business? The one thing that I do believe in life is that anything can be learned. Anything, yeah? Anything can be learned. You're telling yourself that you're not cut out for business because you're really not interested. If you told yourself that you're interested in learning how to do business, you might not be the most efficient, you might not make $1 billion or $1 trillion, but you'll be able to make substantial income to make sure that you're comfortable, very comfortable financially, and go ahead of most people, because most people don't even decide to run their businesses properly. They'll just tell themselves, I want to start a business, and that's enough. They go start the business and it will fail. They don't take due diligence to ensure that they do the business properly. But of course, businesses are not the only option. I believe there are even better options than still building a house earlier on in your early years. There are very many other investment options. You know, you can do stocks, you can do bonds, you can do real estate. It's sensible to do real estate without living in the house. You can buy a house and then rent it out, you know, maybe to a business, maybe for people to come and live inside there. You'll be bringing money into your pocket from the real estate, and that makes even more financial sense, because that way you're earning money, and later on you'll be able to build a house, or I don't know, do whatever you want, you know, buy another house while you have a business running. So then, am I saying that you should never own a house? Of course, if you've understood and listened to everything I've said before, then you understand that it's perfectly okay for you to own a house. I do own a house, but it's not the best financial decision for you to start by owning a house. Of course, it reduces your risk later on. You could decide to maybe save up money for 15 years, 10 years, buy that house and build that house and then live the rest of your life. But you have a better option, yeah? You could do a business, you could do any other form of investment in that money that you are going to use to buy a house, or, you know, put a down payment down, and then a few months or years later, you will be able to build the house you want. But you also do have a business, you also do have an investment, you also do have other things bringing you money. So well, I would love to know what you think about these options in the comment section below. Yeah, come on, let the discussion continue in the comment section below. I know a lot of you people have different ideas, different perceptions of this, but like I've told you, you're probably thinking to yourself, for me, I don't believe in starting a business. I've seen a lot of people starting businesses and they fail. It's true, it's understandable. I've shared a video on this channel. I'll leave a link to that video right here about how to start a business that can never fail. You follow these principles, you'll ensure that you never fail in businesses. It increases your likelihood of succeeding, and well, you will have money saved in just a few months or years to build your house. Check it out. And again, I would love to know your opinions in the comment section below. Catch you very soon with another video. Lots of love. Bye-bye.